For the first time in months, Emily Carter stood alone in the echoing hallway of her now empty house, staring at the final divorce papers she had just signed. The walls still carried the faint shadows of the life she built for 15 years. Family photos now gone, memories stripped away like wallpaper. Her ex-husband, Daniel, took almost everything. The house, the savings, even the car. In the settlement, she was left with a few boxes of clothes, a worn-out handbag, and just $112 in her account. The world she once believed was stable had crumbled beneath her feet, leaving her with nothing but silence and an ache that spread through her chest like a cold winter storm. She stepped outside, locking the door behind her for the last time, and walked down the driveway with slow, heavy steps. Every breath felt thick, as if she was carrying the weight of the past on her shoulders. She didn't have a destination, only a cheap, rented room waiting for her across town. While digging through her purse for the bus fare, her fingers brushed against something hard and small. She pulled it out and froze. It was an old business card, weathered around the edges, something she hadn't seen in years. A banker she once met by coincidence had told her, "If life ever brings you to your lowest point, come see me. Some doors open only when everything else feels closed." Back then, she laughed, sliding the card into her wallet without thinking. But now, standing broken and defeated at the bus stop, those words suddenly felt like a lifeline. She stared at the card for a long moment, her mind racing. Why had she kept it? What could a banker possibly do for her now? And would it make any difference, or was she just grasping at a ghost of hope because she had nothing left? The clouds gathered overhead as she boarded the bus, watching the passing city blur into streaks of grey. She replayed every moment of her marriage, every sacrifice, every argument she ignored, every sign she missed. She wasn't angry anymore. She was simply tired. Tired of pretending she was okay. Tired of being strong for everyone except herself. She held the card tightly in her hand, the faded ink rubbing against her thumb as if urging her forward. By the time she reached the financial district, her heart was beating faster than her footsteps. The bank towered above her, its glass facade reflecting the stormy sky. She hesitated at the entrance, wondering if this was foolish. She had no appointment, no money, no hope. But something inside her whispered that this moment, this single choice, might change everything that came next. With a shaky breath, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The lobby was warm, polished, and filled with people who looked like they had their lives together. Emily felt small among them, but she made her way to the reception desk, clutching the card as if it were the last piece of her life that hadn't fallen apart. When the banker, the same man she met years ago, finally looked up and recognized her, something shifted in his expression. Surprise, concern, and something deeper, something she couldn't name. He slowly stood from his desk, walked toward her and said gently, "Emily, I've been waiting for the day you'd come. There's something you need to see." I didn't realize I was holding my breath until Mr. Wexler stood up so abruptly, his chair scraped against the polished wood floor. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound in the room was the deep ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner, each second slicing the air like a metronome counting down to the moment my old life officially ended. The man who had appeared so composed a minute ago now looked unsettled. He walked to a heavy steel cabinet by the window, unlocked it with a key that hung from a chain inside his vest, and retrieved a thick black folder sealed with a gold emblem identical to the one on my father's card. The moment he set it on the desk between us, I felt a strange pull, like the folder itself held gravity. "Miss Harper," he said, his voice lower now, almost respectful, "before we proceed, I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. He leaned forward, eyes scanning every inch of my face, as if searching for clues. Did your father ever mention a second account? A vault? Any unfinished business from before his accident? I blinked. No. I barely understood what he did for a living. Mum said he gambled everything away. Wexler let out a slow exhale, almost pitying. Your mother was never informed. This, he tapped the folder lightly, was set up long before the bankruptcy, long before the downfall anyone saw publicly. What the world believed about your father was only half the truth. My stomach tightened. What are you talking about? He opened the folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper, thick as cardstock, with 3 lines typed in glossy ink. Tier 1, beneficiary, Emily R. Harper. Access level, unrestricted vault location, sub-level. 3. Wexler looked up at me. Miss Harper, sub-level 3 doesn't exist on any map of this building. A chill crept across my skin. What do you mean it doesn't exist? He sighed, pressed a button on his desk phone and said quietly, Security escort to private entrance. Then he walked around the desk and motioned for me to stand. Your father was part of a legacy program. Very few families worldwide qualify for it. Only heirs who meet certain criteria ever receive this card. Criteria? I echoed. I'm a divorced woman with $47. What criteria? A tiny smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Not unkind, but as though he was seeing something I couldn't yet see. You survived, he said simply. After everything collapsed, you survived without touching the trust. That alone qualifies you. His words wrapped around me and squeezed. I didn't feel strong. I felt like a soggy cardboard box about to collapse. But he was already leading me toward a hidden door behind a bookshelf carved with lions and vines. A guard opened it, revealing a narrow metal staircase spiraling downward. The air changed instantly, colder, sterile, humming with electricity. We descended 1 level, 2, then a 3rd. The stairwell opened into a dim hallway illuminated by a single strip of white LED lights running across the ceiling. The walls were concrete, smooth, almost unnaturally so. Wexler keyed in a long code on a black panel. Nothing happened. He tried again, longer, slower, hands trembling. This time, a heavy thud echoed through the hallway and a door slid open, revealing something I never expected. A massive, circular room lined with glass panels that displayed scrolling numbers, archived documents, digital vaults, gold certificates, even video files tagged with my father's name. Everything glowed faintly blue, like a futuristic archive frozen in time. This, Wexler whispered, is the Harper family vault. I stepped inside cautiously. The room hummed beneath my feet. What is all this? I asked, awe mixing with a rising fear. Your inheritance, he said, but also your responsibility. Before I could ask more, he handed me a small biometric scanner. Place your thumb. I hesitated. What happens if I do? He looked directly into my eyes. Your life changes permanently. Once you activate this vault, there is no going back. My pulse drummed loudly in my ears. Divorce papers, rain-soaked clothes, Jason's locked door. All of it flashed through my mind like a cruel montage. Then I saw my father's face. The way he used to kiss the top of my head and say, "You'll move mountains someday, Emmy." I pressed my thumb to the scanner. The machine beeped. The room lights shifted, deep gold washing over everything. Identity confirmed, a calm female voice announced. Welcome, primary heir, Emily R. Harper. Wexler visibly exhaled in relief. It's real, he whispered. The trust chose you. A panel slid open in front of me, revealing a locked black case engraved with my initials. Inside, Wexler murmured, is the truth your father died trying to protect. My hand hovered over the case. My world had already turned upside down once today. I wasn't sure what would happen when I opened it, but I knew this much. Whatever waited inside would change everything again. The next morning, I woke in a hotel room that still didn't feel real. The sheets were too soft, the pillows too perfect, and the quiet too absolute. No Jason slamming cabinets, no passive-aggressive sighs drifting through the hallway, no financial threats disguised as concerns. For a moment, I lay still, staring at the ceiling fan, turning lazily overhead, wondering if I dreamed the entire thing. The Black Legacy card sat on the nightstand like a silent witness, catching a slice of early sunlight. Its matte surface looked harmless, yet everything in my life had tilted because of it. I reached for it, rolling it between my fingers, trying to connect myself to the world where nearly $500 million had my name on it. But instead of confidence, a deep unease crawled under my skin. Why had no one told me about this trust? Why had Mum insisted we were broke? Why had the bank acted like I was some missing royalty finally returning to claim a throne? A soft knock came at the door. My heart jumped instantly. Old habits don't die easy. And I actually checked the peephole twice before opening it. A woman stood there, probably in her late 50s, silver hair in a sleek bun, wearing a navy blazer with the bank's emblem pinned neatly on the left. She held a leather folder against her chest like it contained classified information. "Miss Harper?" she asked, voice calm and warm in a way that disarmed me. "I'm Margaret, the senior client liaison Mr. Wexler mentioned yesterday. May I come in?" I stepped aside, unsure whether to offer coffee or an apology for looking like I hadn't slept. She walked in gracefully, eyes scanning the room, not critically, but almost protectively, like she had been trained to evaluate threats. She sat on the couch and placed the folder on the coffee table with great care. Inside were documents I couldn't have imagined even in my most desperate fantasies: trust summaries, account numbers, asset inventories, investment portfolios spanning continents. But it wasn't the money that knocked the breath from my lungs. It was the photographs tucked in the back pocket. Dozens of them. My father in places I had never seen. My father shaking hands with men whose names I recognized from headlines. My father standing beside private jets, charity galas, engineering labs and construction sites. My father with younger me, a version of myself I'd forgotten, laughing, holding ice cream, sitting on his shoulders while he pointed at the horizon. Margaret watched quietly as I flipped through them, the edges soft with age. "Your father left instructions," she said gently. "He planned for you to access the trust when you turned 18, but circumstances changed." That word, circumstances, hung in the air like smoke. My chest tightened. "What circumstances?" I asked. Margaret hesitated for the first time since entering the room. "Miss Harper, your mother contacted the bank after your father's passing. She requested that all trust information be sealed until you came forward with the card yourself. She insisted it was for your protection." My protection? The world tilted again, but this time the floor didn't feel solid under my feet. Protection from what? Or from whom? From the truth? From money that could have saved us from losing our home? From the years I spent scraping by, working 2 jobs, believing I came from nothing? My voice trembled. Did she know about all of this? Margaret nodded slowly. Your mother knew everything. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. I remembered her crying over bills, selling furniture, telling me we had no choice but to downsize. I remembered skipping school dances because we couldn't afford a dress, taking college classes at night because loans felt too dangerous, working overtime so Jason wouldn't call me a burden. My hand shook as I closed the folder. Why would she hide this from me? I whispered. Margaret reached into her blazer and slid a sealed envelope across the table. My name was written on the front, in handwriting I recognized instantly. My mother's looping cursive, the same script she used on birthday cards and grocery lists. Your mother left this with us, she explained. She intended for you to receive it the day you used the card. My pulse thudded in my ears as I broke the seal. The letter was short, painfully so, but every line carved into my chest like a blade. She wrote about dangers tied to my father's business partners, about debts owed, about decisions she made without him. Decisions that spiraled. She confessed she'd been terrified someone would come after the money if anyone knew it existed. She wrote that she didn't trust herself to manage the funds responsibly, and she wanted me to grow up unspoiled, grounded, and safe. Then, the last line, the one that shattered me. Forgive me for choosing fear instead of faith in you. I folded the letter carefully and pressed it against my heart. Margaret placed a respectful hand on the table but didn't touch me. Miss Harper, she said gently, this trust doesn't just make you wealthy. It places you in a position of influence your father intended you to have. We can help you understand all of it, but you must decide what comes next. The room felt too quiet, too bright, too heavy. I looked at the photographs again. My father, bold and smiling, always reaching forward. And then the empty space beside him, where I should have been, where my life could have been different if not for secrets meant to shield me. For the first time since the divorce, since Jason locked the door behind me, since I stood soaked in the rain with nothing but a duffel bag and a broken heart, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not confusion, something fiercer, steadier, determination. If this money was meant for me, then so was the truth. So was the future my father had tried to give me. And I wouldn't waste another second letting anyone, Jason, my mother, or even my own doubts, decide my worth. I lifted my chin, breathed deeply, and met Margaret's eyes. Show me everything, I said, every detail, every file, every secret. And for the first time in years, the world felt like it was opening instead of closing. Emily sat in the vice president's dimly lit office long after the initial shock faded. The soft hum of the old heating system blended with the ticking of a brass clock on the bookshelf, its hands moving steadily while her world felt suspended in mid-air. The bank's security team stood outside the door like silent statues, but inside, the air felt charged, thick with a truth that had been buried for more than a decade. Mr. Wexler moved slowly, almost ceremonially, toward a tall filing cabinet that looked older than both of them combined. He unlocked it with a tiny brass key from his pocket, his movements careful, deliberate, as if each gesture risked awakening ghosts. From inside the cabinet, he withdrew a black leather folder embossed with the same crest that had been on the mysterious card. He placed it on the desk between them with a reverence usually reserved for sacred objects. Your father, he began, adjusting his glasses, was not the broken man your mother described. Not completely, at least. Emily's breath caught. She had lived 13 years believing he had gambled away everything, believing he had left them drowning in debt. This folder, he continued, tapping it gently, contains the sealed instructions your father left for the trustee handling your account. No one was allowed to open it until the day you accessed the black card. Emily's fingers trembled as she reached for it. The leather felt warm, almost alive, as though it had been waiting for her. Inside were handwritten pages, yellowed only slightly at the edges. The familiar looping handwriting, her father's, brought a sting to her eyes. The first page began with her childhood nickname. My Emmy, if you're reading this, life has pushed you into a corner. and I am sorry for every moment you felt alone. Her throat tightened. She kept reading. The money you are about to inherit wasn't meant to spoil you. It was meant to protect you from the kind of pain I couldn't shield you from when I was alive. She blinked hard, trying to steady herself. The letter went on to explain how he had built a hidden network of investments, trust structures, and international holdings after realizing that his business partners were plotting to bankrupt him. Instead of confronting them, he had quietly moved assets, everything he could, into a trust under her name. The world had believed he died broke, and he had let them believe it to protect her from those who would come after his fortune. Emmy, the letter read, I hid the truth because danger was closer to home than you ever realized. Emily's eyebrows knit. Danger? From where? From whom? Wexler leaned back in his chair, watching her with an unreadable expression. Your father wasn't paranoid, he said softly. There were people, very powerful people, who wanted access to his empire. That's why this account was locked behind the legacy tier protocols. Only you could open it, and only when life forced you to. Her pulse drummed in her ears. All her life she had thought her family's downfall was due to recklessness. Now she learned it was a calculated sacrifice. Her father had died protecting a fortune meant for her future, a future he feared she might never have if the truth got out. Emily pressed her palm against her forehead, overwhelmed. Why didn't my mother know? She whispered. Wexler's answer came after a heavy sigh. She was never meant to. It wasn't safe. Emily looked back at the letter. Near the end, her father had written something that made her stomach twist. Someone close to you even now will try to claim what is yours. Trust cautiously. Not everyone cheering for you wants your rise. She swallowed. After everything Jason had done, throwing her out, locking her out of her own home, she realized there were people capable of hurting her far more deeply than she had ever imagined. The betrayal from her husband was only the beginning. Wexler cleared his throat gently and slid a second sealed envelope toward her. Your father left this one specifically for today, the day you accessed the funds. Emily opened it slowly. Inside was a list of names, dates, and what looked like coded financial entries. At the bottom was one line written in red ink. If anyone tries to claim ownership, go to the private vault. Everything, absolutely everything, is documented. A faint shiver crawled down her arms. Someone would come for this money. Someone already had, she realized. Jason. He had pushed for her to sign the prenup. He had manipulated her finances. He had changed the locks the moment the divorce papers were signed. Had he known something? Or had he been influenced by someone else? She had spent months thinking she was unworthy, unwanted, discarded. Now she understood. Her life had been a chessboard, long before she realized she was even a player. Emily lifted her chin, the smallest flicker of determination lighting behind her eyes. The woman who walked into the bank that morning was broken, homeless, and hopeless. But the woman sitting in that leather chair now, she had something bigger than money. She had answers, she had a legacy, and she had a reason to stop letting people walk over her. When she finally looked up, Wexler cleared his throat again. Miss Harper, there is more, much more, and you must see it before you decide your next move. Emily nodded slowly. Show me everything. The next morning, sunlight pressed through the thin curtains of the hotel room, but it felt cold rather than warm. I hadn't slept. My mind replayed every word Mr. Wexler had told me, every warning he hinted at but never fully explained. I sat on the edge of the bed, the legacy black card resting in my palm. Something about it felt heavier than yesterday, as if responsibility had a physical weight. My father's voice echoed in my head, the memory so clear it made my chest tighten. Use this only when the world kicks you when you're down. I used to think that meant money. Now I realized he might have meant danger. The hotel hallway outside my door was silent, too silent, like a place holding its breath. I opened the door slowly and almost jumped when I saw a small envelope lying on the carpet. No name, no stamp. Just a single line written in looping pen strokes. Do not trust the bank. My stomach dropped. I looked left, then right, but there was no one. I shut the door and locked it twice, then carried the envelope to the table. My fingers hesitated before opening it. Inside was only a photograph, an old one, slightly yellowed around the edges. My father stood beside a man I didn't recognize, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit and an expression that could cut glass. On the back of the photo was written, "If he finds you, run." My pulse slammed against my ribs. I grabbed my phone and opened the browser, typing my father's full name, followed by the words, Harper Family Trust. For years, I believed my father lost his money gambling. That was the story Mum told. But the search results suggested something else entirely. Old financial articles referring to him as the Quiet Titan, the Ghost Investor, one of the most discreet power brokers on the East Coast. He'd worked behind the scenes with politicians, private security companies, foreign businessmen. It made my head spin. Why had he hidden all that from us? Why did he leave the money untouched for 12 years? A knock rattled the door, sharp, impatient. I froze. Then a voice. Housekeeping! I exhaled shakily, relief washing through me. When I opened the door, a young woman with a cleaning cart smiled politely. But something felt off. Her eyes flicked immediately to the nightstand where I had accidentally left the black card. Not normal curiosity, recognition, real recognition. Her smile tightened. "You're Emily Harper, right?" she asked casually. Too casually. "Someone downstairs is asking about you." My heart lurched. "Who?" She shrugged. "Two men, suits. One had a photo." I didn't wait for more information. I grabbed my bag, stuffed the card inside and slipped past her. The elevator was too risky, so I took the stairs, descending all 10 flights with shaking legs. Every sound felt amplified, the echo of my footsteps, the hum of distant vacuum cleaners, the faint ring of a phone at the reception desk. I reached the lobby and stopped behind a pillar. 2 men in grey suits stood by the front counter, one holding a photograph. I didn't need to see it up close to know it was my face. My world narrowed to a single thought. I have to get out. I slipped through the side exit, pushing into the bright morning air. The street was busy, cars honking, people rushing by, but to me it felt like a scene underwater, muffled and surreal. I turned my head once and saw the hotel doors open. One of the men stepped out, scanning the sidewalk with predatory calm. I ducked into the nearest taxi and slammed the door. "Drive," I whispered. The driver blinked. "Where to?" "Anywhere that isn't here." He pressed the gas hard. Buildings blurred past as I tried to steady my breathing. When I finally looked up, I noticed the driver watching me through the rearview mirror, not with curiosity, but recognition. "You're Harper's girl, aren't you?" he said. My blood ran cold. Before I could speak, he added, "Your father saved my brother's business 15 years ago. If someone's after you, whoever they are, you're not safe with strangers." I stared at him, uncertain whether to trust him. But something in his voice felt honest, grounded, human, something I hadn't felt in days. He pulled into a quiet alley and handed me a business card. "Go to this address," he said softly. "Warehouse district, old brick building with green doors. Someone there owes your father a debt. They'll protect you. But listen carefully." He leaned closer. The people looking for you, they're not after the money. They're after what the money controls. My breath caught in my throat. What does that mean? He shook his head. I don't know everything, but your father, he was involved in something big, bigger than the trust, bigger than all of us. He opened the door for me. Go now and keep that card hidden. I stepped out, gripping my bag so tightly my knuckles turned white. The driver sped away without looking back. I stood alone in the alley, the city humming around me, unaware that my life had just crossed a threshold I couldn't return from. The black card pulsed like a heartbeat in my pocket, and for the first time I realised my father didn't leave me money. He left me a war. Mr. Wexler's words hung in the air like a detonated secret, still echoing through the silence of the office as Emily sat frozen in the leather chair, unable to comprehend the reality of what she'd just heard. For a moment, everything in the room blurred. The mahogany shelves stacked with thick financial ledgers, the antique globe spinning slowly from a draft she couldn't feel, the golden floor lamp humming faintly. Her father, the man she remembered as loud, unpredictable, and always flirting with disaster, suddenly appeared before her in an entirely new light, reshaping himself in her memory. This wasn't a gambler who lost everything. This was a man who had shielded her from a truth so enormous it would have changed the trajectory of her entire life. As she blinked back the burning in her eyes, Wexler reached into a locked drawer and pulled out a heavy black folder, embossed with the same gold crest as the card. He laid it gently in front of her, as though placing ancient treasure on a museum pedestal. Your father, he began, voice deepening, was not just a client. He was one of the founding benefactors of this institution, and one of the most brilliant, strategic investors we ever had. His fortune was hidden deliberately. This card could only activate when you turned 29 or experienced what he termed a life-kicking event. He paused, his eyes softening. It seems your divorce met the criteria. Emily's breath hitched. All the nights she cried alone, convinced she had married wrong, loved wrong, lived wrong, suddenly felt like steps leading her to this moment. As she opened the folder, her fingers trembling, she found decades of documents, investment statements, handwritten letters addressed to her, and a final, sealed envelope labelled, "For Emmy, when she is ready." Her father's looping handwriting struck her straight through the heart. Her throat tightened, memories flooding, his laugh, the smell of his cologne, the way he ruffled her hair after soccer games. She whispered, barely audible, "Dad, you knew." And for the first time since the divorce, she didn't feel broken. She felt chosen, protected, prepared for something larger than her old life. She looked up at Wexler, her voice firming. "I want to know everything." He nodded slowly. "Then, Miss Harper, prepare yourself. This story begins long before you were born." The crisp rustle of the folder filled the room as Emily slid the sealed envelope free, her pulse thrumming with anticipation and fear all at once. She broke the wax seal, an ornate H pressed into gold, and unfolded the letter carefully, as though the paper itself might crumble under the weight of time. Her father's voice came alive instantly in the looping script. "My Emmy," the letter began, "if you are reading this, the world has taken something from you, but I left you something it cannot." He detailed the truth, how he had stepped away from the Harper Family Trust after discovering corruption within its board, how he had secretly moved the liquid assets into protected accounts only she could access, how the card in her hand had been his silent promise that no matter what life did to her, she would never truly be alone. At the bottom of the letter, written more shakily, were instructions, contacts, names of people she could trust, companies she now owned partial shares in, and a final line that wrapped itself around her heart like an embrace. Build something, Emmy. Not out of fear, but out of freedom. Emily inhaled sharply. She felt something inside her shift. Not the girl who stood in the rain waiting for Jason to open the door. Not the woman who begged for scraps of affection. But someone stronger, clearer, reborn. She looked at Wexler, lifting her chin with a steadiness she hadn't felt in years. "What do I do now?" she asked. Wexler smiled. Small, respectful, almost proud. "Now, Miss Harper, you decide the size of your future." As she stepped out of the bank hours later, the city lights flickering against her soaked clothes, she no longer felt cold or lost. She felt powerful. Her past had closed its final chapter, and in its place, a new story began. One where she wasn't the abandoned ex-wife with nothing. She was Emily Harper, heiress to a forgotten empire, a woman with nearly $500 million, a legacy to uncover, and a future she would script herself. And this time, no one, not Jason, not the law, not fate, would ever take anything from her again.